Adam is out this week. Leo Kane is here hanging out in the studio with me.
Yeah, I'm here for hour number 2. We never got to the hidden values of home ownership.
We did not. I'm so sorry. We're going to have to table that for another day, but we get so excited when people call in and ask questions. I love it.
Those were great questions. I'd like to thank Barbara for calling in.
Yeah, and that's an important thing to pay attention to, right? Because we're talking about the median time frame in her market is 27 days, I think it was, in Hillsborough to get to contract, and she's at 30 days. You got to pay attention to that stuff. So hour number 2, we're going to talk a little bit about some insurance stuff, and I'm going to welcome our guest in the studio and one phoning in. So we have Mr. Mike Koselny. Welcome.
Thank you.
And he is the Director of Underwriting for Florida Peninsula Insurance, right?
That's correct.
And you are out of the Sarasota office. Thanks for making the drive this morning.
No problem.
And we also have Stacy. I don't want to butcher your last name. Can you help me out with this one?
You can just make it easy and say Galanti.
Galanti, thank you. And you are the Chief Legal Officer and Co-Founder for Florida Peninsula Insurance, and you are one of Florida's largest home insurers. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
No, so where are you calling in from today? Where are you at?
Right now, I'm up in the Northeast with family. I'm calling from New England.
Oh, how's the temperature like there?
A little bit cloudy and in the high 30s Fahrenheit. So I know you guys are definitely warmer down there in that area, which is great.
I think we're going to hit 80 today. Is that right, Pat?
Yeah.
I think, is it 79 or 80? We're supposed to be up there today.
It's a warm front for us now.
We're excited about that. So, Stacy, tell me a little bit about your company, and you're the Chief Legal Officer. So, what's your role there with the insurance company?
I am one of the executives, one of the co-founders of the company. I oversee, besides board governance and some boring things, I oversee the claims department. I oversee our legal department and our special investigations unit. And so we're probably the 5th or 6th largest homeowner insurance company in the state of Florida. It varies. We've got a couple 100,000 customers. We insure probably all told over $40 billion in homes in Florida. We are only homes, condo units, renters. We don't do any commercial. We are concentrated on the Florida homeowner.
Got it. Yeah, and it's an interesting, different little market there. Adam was talking about how some of the insurance companies are actually doing flood endorsements on the policies. Are you guys doing that too?
Yes. We Mike can talk about that as well.
Okay.
He's our director of underwriting, but we do. We absolutely have both the regular flood endorsement that's covered through the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program, as well as separate endorsements that we cover beyond that should you need a different type of coverage or in a different area.
I'm glad he's here. We're going to spend a little bit of time on that in the last part of the hour because I think it's relevant, right, in some of the things that we talk about. And then, tell me a little bit about your company. How long ago did it get started?
We've got Florida Peninsula Insurance Company. We also own, as part of our Florida Peninsula family of companies, a company called Edison Insurance Company. They're both Florida-based. We have our offices, our headquarters are in Boca Raton, Florida, in southeast Florida, and we have our underwriting and a field office where Mr. Koselny works out of. He can describe it to you. Right in Sarasota, Florida. We are statewide. Again, homeowners. We started in 2005 was our first season where we got hit with those 4 storms. We weathered them. We cut our teeth on those 4 storms all over the state.
I love that. You know what that reminds me of, Stacy? That reminds me of if somebody entered the housing market as a real estate agent when it was crashing, because that's essentially what you did.
Yep.
We did, and it was good for us in the sense that other companies were running out, and so there was an opportunity for us to come in. And what we were able to do is kind of use a higher level technology, a little more of a granular structure, which Mike can discuss in how we underwrite, how we sell policies, so that we were able to get good homes and be able to protect people with, charging the right amount, a fair amount, offering service, old-fashioned service. You call up, you can get someone on the phone. Everybody is a U.S.-based, and almost all are Florida-based employees that, work here and will answer your phone call. And so we wanted to do it kind of the old-fashioned way. And even though everybody else was running for the hills, we stayed and we grew our business since 2005.
That's awesome, and I hope to peg him a little bit and talk to him about some of the things that, like from an underwriting perspective, what you might not see on the front end or the back end, and things that people, because I think it's easy to get, like you guys know what you're looking at, right, in the insurance world, but I would say the layperson has no idea, right? So we talked about this during the Halloween edition show that we did for Tampa Home Talk, and what we shared was, and I had no idea that, like, if there was a homicide or something in the property, that homeowners insurance didn't pay to help clean that up. But apparently a lot of them don't cover that. So I thought it was really interesting that it just wasn't something that's covered. It certainly wouldn't be something you would be thinking about when you got your insurance policy. Exactly. But that's what insurance does, right? Is it covers you for all the unknown and the what ifs. And so that's the important part that we want to try to highlight on. And then of course we're at the holidays, so we'll talk about some of those things with regards to home fires and what's included, what's not. And I would love, you handle a lot of the claims part, you said too, right, Stacy?
That's correct. I oversee the claims department.
So let me ask you about that, just from a claims perspective, because you see the aftermath, right? The time when it's time for the insurance company to actually pay out. What are some of the things you're seeing, like in terms of claims, where a claim gets denied for something simple, right? Maybe on the application or whatever. Can you give me a few examples of things that you've seen, just to kind of prepare the homeowner and the person listening for something they might not be aware of?
Sure. I mean, I can tell you from both perspectives, obviously, and you just mentioned the application. Obviously, telling the truth on the application, giving us or whatever insurance company you have the truth. Do you live in the house? Again, this is kind of Mike's area of expertise, but from a claims perspective, it's unfortunate, but if you tell us you live in the house and you don't live in the house, that's going to be a problem, because we cover homeowners. We cover place where you live. Unless you specifically tell us it's a second residence or something of that nature, we assume you live there. You're making sure there's not leaking water.
So
can we the doors at night?
Can we talk about that for just a moment, because that brings a very interesting point. For a file that was supposed to close actually today, and it's being pushed to Wednesday, we ended up going with the builder's risk policy because the 4-point really wasn't favorable, right? That's the additional things that you guys look for on the insurance. Leo, you could probably talk more about that. But basically, the only 3 ways you can occupy a home would be an owner-occupant, meaning you're going to live there, a renter's going to be living there, or it's going to be a second home. And if it's vacant, of course, your insurance company needs to know about that. So with that being said, I've got just a question I want to run past you, and I want to know what your thoughts are on this, okay? Because the client that's buying it is fully intending to own or occupy it, right? But the house needs some work. Obviously, they're probably going to redo the roof. They're going to be redoing some stuff. It's not the funnest thing to live in a construction zone. And if they have another home and they can basically, live in that place while they renovate the other one, it's interesting. And I'm sure there's a fine line on, when is it actually your owner-occupied home? And so from my perspective, I'm looking at it like, okay, are you going to turn the power on? Yes. Are all the utilities going to be on? Yes. Are you going to be doing some work? Yes. Could you sleep there? Maybe. If you're too exhausted, you might just end up staying there, right, for the night. So how much would a person need to actually be there for it to be factual that it's still an owner-occupied property versus having to go to the extreme opposite end of the spectrum and get a builder's risk policy?
Yeah, man. I can address that a little bit. I think from our perspective, what's important is what's the timing for this? How long is this going to take?
Well,
it's going to be a couple of weeks or a couple of months.
That's the $1 million question, right? So they could plan on exactly. 3 to 4 weeks, but what if they want to cash flow some stuff? It could take a little longer.
The risk to the policyholder, and certainly to us as well, is in the process of renovation, without anybody being there, there's a question of how secure the property is, right?
Okay, so what if you've gotten an alarm and you're checking on it every day and you're there every day?
Right, and that would be what our expectations would be as they're going through that. But the question becomes, what is how extensive are the renovations that are taking place on the home, and if it's
So I love that
significant
thought.
where it's going to take a long time, builder's risk is probably the best approach.
Let's table that right there, Mike,
Sure.
and we're going to answer that when we come back right after the break. And I hate to put you guys on the spot,
No
but
worries.
it's a real world question that
Absolutely.
we have today, and that's why I'm asking
We get those
it.
requests all the time.
So, Mike, stick around because I'm really hoping you'll chime in on this from the claims perspective too, which I can never get anybody to respond on. Is that right, Leo?
We have an underwriter, and this is amazing. I mean, we have a chief legal officer and an underwriter for an insurance company here. This is awesome.
Pretty darn good show. Too bad Adam's missing that.
I know.
It didn't plan out like this. It just happened.
We got like top secret people that.
All right, so it's Tampa Home Talk. Stick around. We're rolling into a break, but we will be right back.
Good morning. Welcome back. You're at Tampa Home Talk. We've got Stacy and Michael from Florida Peninsula Insurance on
Who
the.
prefers Mike?
Mike. It says Michael here.
I know.
My wife, only my wife calls me Michael.
Michael?
Oh,
Michael?
yeah.
You're in trouble.
Usually I'm in trouble.
Yeah, you're usually in trouble. But yeah, this is awesome. We've got so many things. I definitely want to cover cybersecurity because we that's a topic we've had on the past.
We're going to get to that.
I wanted to cover that this hour.
We are, but let's talk about what my initial question I had, right? So let's dive back into this because this is a real story we have right now. Remember the 4-point we were looking at last week on the air?
Yes.
Do you remember the specifics on what was messed up with that?
No. Well, there was
Like
electrical.
pieces with their roof, and there was a few electrical
Yeah,
things.
roofing and electrical. The major issues, there's only the major stuff.
Sure.
So with that being said, right, they imagine it's going to be, let's say their estimated time frame is 3 weeks or less than a month, but you never know how that can go, right?
Sure.
If they run into more things, it's an older home and it takes a little bit longer. You said your primary concern is, will something happen to the home if they're not there? But what if they are there every day?
See, that's the benefit, I think, in that situation, and that's why when we look at those situations, we want to know what work is being done. Is it contracted? Are there deposits in place so that we know the work's going to happen? We understand there'll be delays in any of the renovation work that happens. But we want to know the extent of what those things are.
Is this for
and then
builder's
security
risk policy?
So if it's a long-term thing, if they're doing major, they're tearing the floors out, they're redoing walls, all the bathrooms, kitchen, new roof, that's a builder's risk because there's the exposures not just to us, but to the building materials that are on site. Thieves look for that stuff, and that's an easy walk away. They can take it and
so
go.
my question is, what if
builder's risk is for the long term,
So what if the
short term
owners
things we can do.
So when you say short term, you mean less than 30 days or less than 60 days or 90 days?
60 days is what we typically look at.
Okay. So
And then we
if
track that. We follow up. We make sure we get back to the agent because our relationship is with them. Certainly, they're the person who sends that risk to us. We want to work with them to follow through to make sure that all the work is being done.
So what options does somebody have for an owner-occupant property where they're doing some work on it? They think it's going to take 30 or 60 days, but they don't want to quite move in until the work is done. Would there be any challenges with doing that?
So we do that every day today. We have risks where that's the situation. We want to know up front that that's happening, so we have that communication with the agent. One of the questions on our application is our renovations being done? And our agents know in our guidelines that what would the time frame for that. We want to be appraised of that.
Which
into
is,
something.
what's acceptable for owner-occupant?
So like having the electrical panel replaced and some electrical work done by a licensed electrician is a good thing. And knowing that there's a contract in place with deposits, we know the work's going to be done.
Do they have to provide that, or can they figure that out after they close? What if they don't want to put a deposit on anything until they own the home?
And that's fine too. Again, we're going to follow up to make sure it's being done. I think that's the most important part of that. We don't want to extend ourselves out into a long-term situation where I've seen things in my 40 years in this business where the intent was to have that done and a year later still nothing's being done. And we want to be sure the home is secure, it's safe, it's not exposed to any potential electrical fires or theft exposures.
So there really wouldn't be any challenges if you had licensed contractors doing the work.
Absolutely.
You were checking on the property every day. You wouldn't have to spend the night there just for it to be an owner-occupant
not at all. In
policy.
fact,
You said you're
oftentimes-
worried about people breaking in, so
Right.
alarm system would cover that.
And those are great as long as they turn them on and they use them.
Right.
There's a lot of people who have alarms that never turn them on.
this day and age, you can do it remotely from your phone,
Absolutely.
right?
I do it with mine all the time.
Isn't putting the sign in the front yard, is that turning it on?
Well, it's
No.
it's a deterrent, but it may not be the best.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm with you. I have it on my phone as well.
Yeah.
And before I leave the house, that's the last thing I do.
What I ran into is, my buyer was an attorney, or is an attorney, real estate attorney at that. And then his wife is a judge. So they're like, oh, we don't want any gray areas. But I really didn't think that was a gray area because I know their intent is to occupy it. I know they're also going to cash flow a lot of the work. But I thought a builder's risk was really extreme.
Yeah, and that's a decision I think ultimately the agent has to make. They have to assess that with the policyholder, potential policyholder up front, to make sure that the agent's choosing the best coverage for that particular policyholder, whatever it might be. And if they want to come to us, and we have lots of conversations with agents about those situations because it's very common. You buy homes, maybe you're going to have everything painted or the floors redone before you move in. Well, that's a 1 or 2 week process. Typically, it's not something that's going to extend on for long periods of time.
Right.
So we accept those. And I think typically the industry is pretty open to that. I can't speak for the other companies, but I can speak for ours.
I mean, because honestly, when you look at it, I think most people's intent would be to occupy it within 30 days.
Yeah.
And if that's your intent going into it, I don't see where there's any fraud, personally. In knowing darn good and well, things can happen. It can take longer. It could be sooner, but it's just one of those things you don't know till you get in it.
I think the one thing, and one comment you made earlier was, we want homes to be occupied by the homeowner or to be a seasonal. So someplace, there's lots of snowbirds that come to Florida. They buy homes to spend the winter here, long periods of time. We accept those. If it's being purchased to be rented, then our company is not really a place for that policyholder to be. We don't offer a policy that provides coverage for rented properties.
And there's always like those new challenges, right, that present itself in any market.
Right.
Like you can have your rental for a year, but like the Airbnb, I imagine that's something that's a little bit more challenging to cover.
Absolutely, it is. And a lot of companies like us have specific provisions in the policy that address the Airbnb situation. So there are specific companies that are best at insuring those types of exposures, but the typical homeowner's policy really doesn't provide that kind of coverage.
There's another thing too that I think a lot of people, it's really easy to lose sight of this, and we see this, and it's something we would want someone to always be aware of. What happens when you own or occupy a property for a long time, and then for whatever reason, right, so you get a job transfer or whatever, you're not in that home every day, right? So what point would you say you really have to notify your homeowner's insurance that it's not owner occupied? Because even the seller of the same home we're talking about, literally him and his wife were splitting time between Virginia, West Palm Beach, and then this home that they were moving out of. But the alarm was on all the time. The utilities were in their name. We're checking on the property every week. They're checking on the property periodically. So at what point would you say they need to report that it's not owner occupied?
I think as soon as they enter into a rental arrangement with a tenant, that's the time when you need to.
No, there's no tenant in there.
Yeah. If it's not occupied, it's just they're in the throes of selling it.
Right.
The best possible time to give to us is when they're getting ready to make sure. As long as it's secure, that's the most important thing, and that people are watching it, the property. We don't want to go long periods of time. I wouldn't typically recommend extending beyond the renewal date of the policy. Get to your company sooner.
Well,
let them know what the situation is.
Of course, if it's renewing and you're not there, I would say that changes the dynamics of the policy.
Absolutely.
But if it's in the interim and you're preparing, that could take several months, sometimes 6 months.
I've been through that many times. I've moved 9 times in
wow.
my work career, and so I've had plenty of situations where the home wasn't occupied and I was living somewhere else. But I addressed it with the insurance company, with my agent at the insurance company.
So that's a great question. Give me one of those scenarios. I want to know when and how you addressed it and what the situation was.
So I moved from Ohio to Florida, and my wife and I moved down here in temporary housing in April. We moved into our house in October. As soon as I entered in a temporary arrangement here, I notified my agent.
Well, that's
and
also
that way he had
several
information.
States away.
Right.
So
and I had a security system, and I had a realtor checking on my home on a weekly basis to make sure everything was secure.
How did that change your policy in terms of coverage and premium?
So there's a difference between occupied and vacant, right? So in my situation, vacant means there's nothing in the home, no evidence that someone lives there.
So no furniture?
No furniture, nothing. Unoccupied means there's things there, but no people on a regular basis.
That's an interesting little distinction right there.
Absolutely.
So did your premium change? Did your coverage change at all? Okay.
But my agent stayed with me and make sure, as I was drawing close to the renewal date, he was contacting me to say, what's the status now? Have you moved? Is the policy, is it going to be unoccupied for a longer period of time? beyond the renewal date.
Now, does your agents have to change anything with the underwriter or with the policy to let the insurance company know that it's unoccupied?
Well, he notified the company.
Okay.
And to let them know. And they made no change.
So just putting them on notice is
the
enough.
most important thing. Tell us what's happening. That's the important thing. Just like this happens very frequently in Florida, where someone buys a home, they live in it for a while, and maybe circumstances change where it's a seasonal, and then they decide they're going to go back north because of whatever reason, and now it's not occupied, or
so
they decide to rent
unoccupied to unoccupied to rental to seasonal.
As soon as it goes to rental, that's the point at which my recommendation to anyone is notify your insurance company.
Yeah.
Go to your agent first.
Well, that
get
makes
the appropriate
sense,
coverage.
right? That's a big liability when you start factoring tenants in there
Absolutely.
and people in there, and you don't know what parties they're going to have in there. That's all liability.
And the
for
homeowner's
insurance.
policy is designed for an occupied home, and a rental policy, dwelling fire policy, which provide coverage for rented dwellings, is really designed for the rented exposure, and in some circumstances, vacants as well.
So we'll talk about this because I actually know somebody, very good friend of mine, was living in a rented home, happened to take a quick visit, just like now, over the holidays to visit family in Virginia, and the whole house, a dishwasher sparked a fire of some sort, and it wasn't like where it burned down, but the whole house was smoke filled, and she didn't have a renter's policy.
Oops.
So we'll talk about that for a minute. We'll also talk about how to prevent some fires, especially over the holidays, and then we're going to get into cybercrime when we get back right over the weekend. Hey, if you got any questions for Mike or Stacy, or you want to tune in or give us some input for the show, 813-377-2775. Call us or text us, 813-377-2775. If you've got a question like Barbara and you want to go on air, just call or text us, 813-377-2775.
Well, good morning. Welcome back. Leo Kane here with Beryl Engineering and Inspection. I've got Stacy on the line, Chief Legal Officer and co-founder of Florida Peninsula Insurance, one of Florida's largest home insurers.
And Mike.
Oh, and Mike.
In the studio.
I was getting a director of underwriting.
Yeah.
I didn't know underwriters were real people because you never actually talk to an underwriter.
In the flesh.
In the
right
flesh.
here.
This is amazing.
I got 25 more sitting back in Sarasota right now.
See, he says 25 more. They're behind a curtain. No one knows who they are.
No, we know who our agents know.
It's like the Watchmen show on HBO. They're all wearing masks when they're out in public. No one can truly know what they are and what they do.
I thought you were talking about loan underwriters for a minute.
They're all like
We're all in the same family.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I'm your host, Katrina Madewell. Thanks for sticking around. Special edition for you related to insurance this hour. Have anything you want to add, Stacy? We've been pretty chatty the last segment.
I've been listening with rapt attention, of course, to one of the experts that I work with, Mike. The only thing I would add again is for people when they're filling out, especially if they're just joining your show, filling out applications, talking to their insurance company. Obviously, always give us the facts. Always tell your agent what's going on. If you've moved out of the house, if you're selling the house, if you put a renter in it, those are all things that could affect a claim later. You don't want to find out later. Obviously, it's in the policy. We let people know, but you don't want to find out later during the claim process that you have to live in the home for it to be covered, or that flood insurance isn't part of a normal homeowner's policy. You want to find out these things up front. We cover a lot of things. Your home is covered for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for multiple types of losses, along with liability in most cases if someone gets injured on your property. So, we are investing in you and in your home in a sense. And so you want to make sure that you keep your agent and you keep your carrier up to date with any changes that are happening in your life relating to your dwelling.
Yeah, excellent point. And that, to your point, I think flood is one of those things that people often don't pay attention to. And it's not part of the homeowner's family. It's basically a separate add-on policy. I love seeing that some of the insurance companies are actually doing endorsements on these, because I think it's a big market that people are under, insurance companies are under capitalizing on, and really it's not, I don't think it's that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things.
Well, I'm on a hill, so.
Yeah.
That's the best. Well, the best way to avoid flood is you don't live on the beach and you live on a hill.
Oh, Leo.
That's the best flood
Good luck
policy.
finding a real hill in Florida, though.
I am in Ybor Heights, so I mean, if my elevation is 26.5, across the street is 12.5, so I'm on the hill.
Comparatively speaking, yes, you
Those
are.
are inches.
The only thing I would jump in and say is that about 25 or 26% of all flood claims nationally are in zones that are not flood zones.
Yep.
That's almost 1 in 4, about 1 in 4.
Yeah, but along those lines,
Are in areas.
every house in Florida, or at least in the greater Tampa Bay area, which is the 4-county area, is flood zone X, which is actually still a flood zone.
Yep. Virtually everybody in Florida has a flood exposure.
Yeah, we have flood.
Unless you're on top of a garbage dump.
Yeah.
What's your average premiums looking like for these endorsement add-on policies? They're at X, so they're not in a flood zone.
No, they are in a flood zone. Flood zone is X.
X is still a flood
Yeah,
zone.
it's that's a big.
It's minor, but it's a flood.
It's a flood zone.
Yeah, it's hard to evaluate a specific premium because it's all dependent on the coverages you choose, right? So you typically, are you going to insure your the home at the same value that you insured for all the other risks associated with that home? So many people don't buy the full value of the home as flood coverage because the anticipation is the roof is not going to be damaged by a flood. If the water's that high, we're all in trouble.
Yeah, we got different issues going on.
But typically people buy less. There's two options for our agents. They can go through our website to a reseller of the National Flood Plan, and they can purchase a policy for the policyholder through that system, or they can add the endorsement to ours. We're very selective about which zones we insure. We don't insure the coastal floods.
The last one you did, the endorsement, how much was it?
Oh, geez.
Remember?
I'm just thinking of my own personal one.
Okay, what is
Couple
it?
$100.
Okay.
So you don't insure AE?
No.
Okay.
No.
So, but it's super affordable, right? For a
It's
couple
absolutely
$100
is.
a year, it's worth that money.
I think so. I mean, you think about the Tampa Bay. If Irma had been off the coast as opposed to going inland, the surge into Tampa Bay would have been significant.
Yes.
The draw of water out and then the surge back could have been devastating to the entire Tampa Bay area.
Instead, we got an amazing feature back when Irma hit that the bay was actually brought out. So you can actually walk in the ocean at that point because the water was
and it didn't all rush back
it didn't
in.
rush back in. So it was an awesome phenomenon.
Right.
See all kinds of stuff, and some of the poor sea life don't make it, but it's still pretty cool to see.
And then it rained sharks.
Yeah, and if you look up and down the coast, Fort Myers Beach, even Clearwater Beach, the piers were visible all the way out.
Crazy, isn't
They're
it?
unbelievable.
It's a good time to rebuild them real quick.
But I like that kind of phenomenon where you can see something really cool in nature and not have a destructive force behind it.
Yeah, but I think the important part about it that you think about homeowners insurance. I mean, the primary thing certainly. Where we live, hurricane's a problem, and it's significant. If you think about what happened from Hurricane Michael, the devastation that took place in the Panhandle because of that. But we really insure for fire, and yet fire is not a significant portion of the losses that people experience.
Do you
But
guys
the
have
devastation that occurs because of a fire in your personal life is it's never happened to me, thank goodness.
Do you guys have any stats? Like, I don't know if maybe Stacy would have that, but any stats on like the number one type of claim you get
Sure.
kind of on down for last
in advance of
year?
this, I did a little bit of research. I don't have
That's
anything
awesome.
committed to memory, but the internet is a wonderful thing. There's
Yeah.
all kinds of great information out there. I found one thing interesting. So I looked particularly related to fatalities in fire and what the top states were in the country, and this was results as of 2018, but Florida was number 9.
I believe it.
In terms of fatalities as associated with fire.
Who was number one?
Texas.
Well, it's a bigger landmass, right?
Where's California on the list?
New York was second, Pennsylvania, Illinois, California was fifth. But I was
thought it would be
surprised
higher
Florida
up.
was higher.
That's
as
amazing
high as
that
it was.
California would be fifth because you hear about wildfires in
All the
California
time.
all the time.
But there's an evacuation. It's sort of like hurricane. When you
Yeah.
think about that, we can evacuate because of a hurricane. You can't run from a tornado because oftentimes it's there in
It's
an
gonna
instant.
outrun you.
But you can get away from a fire. We can get away from a hurricane. But in our circumstances, fires happen here typically because of things that you do yourself in your own home or things that are part of that. Certainly lightning causes fires, but it's not as frequent in terms of the cause of losses.
Well, we have wildfires in Brevard County, especially.
Sure,
We have
the whole
wildfires.
state is exposed to it potentially. I think DeSoto County last year or 2017 had fires, and we lost a number of homes in DeSoto County because of that. But one thing, interesting thing was the most common things that cause fires. 50% of the fires are for kitchen. So you would expect that. That's what fire is, right?
I almost actually did that. Like one time I was making.
And the most common
stuff.
exposure in kitchen fires is oil, a pot of oil on the stove, and you walk out of the room.
Okay, guilty. That almost happened. Like I'm just saying. Like I had an infant.
So if there's one thing, that
I was making French fries. There was oil.
Exactly. I just did that last night.
You
I was
don't even
making
want to
fries.
know
I
what I
didn't even leave the room.
did. I grabbed the whole pan. It was cast iron. And I threw it in the pool. It
When
was
you
on
think about
fire.
it's really fire in the kitchen is the most significant thing, because the other areas of the house are bedroom fires are 7%, chimney fires 6%. These are national numbers. These are not
So
specific to
bedroom
Florida.
fires. Where is that?
Electrical.
Cigarettes. Or electrical?
Cigarettes,
Okay.
Space heaters, frayed wires.
Right. Smoking is a big cause of fire. Smoking
Getting
materials.
I was just
passing out with a
wondering-
cigarette in your hand.
Yeah, like in the bedroom. Like.
It's interesting though when you look at, where smoking is the biggest problem. North Carolina, probably no surprise. That's where tobacco's grown.
Yeah, the kitchen makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But when you said bedroom, I was trying to connect those dots
Yeah.
in my head.
Chimneys, living room fires, laundry room. Yeah, Stacy, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think you're nailing it. I think some of the bedroom and the other fires occur from people use appliances that might be old. There may be some, UL issues. Also, we find that from those power strips, if they're old,
Oh, that's right.
sometimes wires are crossed or bent and they cause a short. Other times people do very, very silly things like put a towel over their lamp in order to, mute the light instead of dimming it somehow, and that catches on fire from the heat. People falling asleep smoking. Yes, it's only 7%, but it results in fatalities.
Yep.
And it happens. 50% of the fires happen at night also when people are sleeping.
Right.
50%. That's huge, and people need to be careful about
There's
that.
some other things that happen too. There's this term called daisy chaining. So you take one power strip and then you plug another into it because we're in an electronic world today. Everything comes with a cord now that has to be charged, right? Because everything is wireless, but it still has to be charged. So, we have lamps in our bedroom now that have outlets in the base of them, so you can plug your charger in.
Definitely.
But
So
one thing that I
daisy
found
chain.
was interesting in this research I did was putting the right size, the right wattage of bulb in the lamps in your room.
That's a
is
big-
significant.
yeah.
If you put a 100 amp or 100 watt bulb in a 40 amp light switch, there's a chance that's going to overheat to the point because the surrounding materials isn't really designed for that.
Yeah, definitely.
And fires are caused because of
Does
that.
it say
So
in the
those are
lamp?
simple things you
It
can
does.
do.
Everywhere?
does.
Yeah, on every lamp there's a little sticker when you put the bulb in. It says what the wattage is. Don't ever
Yeah,
exceed that.
in the can lamps like these,
Yeah.
if you take the bulb out, you can see it's usually a little silver
Right.
sticker.
That's an important thing, and I think a lot of people don't think about that when they're changing light
Indeed.
bulbs in their
Yeah,
house.
indeed.
But it's a real something you can do that's simple. If it says
So-
40 watts, put a 40
Well,
watt.
what's nice now is you have a lot of the bulbs that are they're rated for like 40, but they're really putting out 6.
Right.
So you can get a 100-watt bulb that's really doing 25.
Right.
Yeah.
And the LED
Yeah.
Has made
bulbs
the world
today are
better.
much safer as opposed to the CFL bulbs, which they've already shown that they are a cause of loss. Those bulbs do get hot and they overheat. Sometimes they burst. We've seen losses. I know Stacy. We've seen fires that were caused by those bulbs.
I know when we were changing the bulbs even in here and out there, when I touched them, they were hot. I was like, oh no, we're taking these out and throwing them away.
Yeah, the LED, if you can take it out, it's never hot.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
What about the Christmas? Well, I guess we're in Christmas fire season.
That's exactly what I
Right.
was thinking. We're talking about daisy chaining.
So daisy
So you
chaining
think
lights.
lights outside is, potentially safer than inside, but not really. There's
So
still
water.
exposure, right? But certainly making sure that you're not drawing more amps out of an outlet because of all the things you have plugged in there, because that's gonna cause not something specific to the lights plugged into it, but to the wiring between that outlet and the circuit panel.
So we're like quickly running out of time, and real quick, let's just chat about, because I think it's a big misconception. Renters, you have a renter's policy. These things are so cheap, it doesn't make sense not to have it. because what happens is literally if you have a smoke fire or any type of fire, none of your stuff is covered.
Mm-hmm.
And your homeowner's insurance is only going to insure the owner, and it's none of their stuff is in there. So it's just going to fix the inside.
Right.
Stuff.
It's really important to have tenants insurance, not just for the fact that you're providing coverage for your personal things. Most people think of tenants as a theft policy.
Yeah.
They really don't think about it in terms of all the things that could happen to their things.
And these
but the important thing is you get liability
$500 a year.
Yeah, and you get liability coverage. So if you cause an accident, say you're on the bus and you poke somebody's eye out with your umbrella,
that's covered under the tenant's policy.
That's covered under the liability portion of because your liability is. All
right, stick around. We are back.
Sure.
Are you looking? Well, good morning. Welcome back. Leo Kane here with Stacy from Florida Peninsula Insurance. We have Mike from Florida Peninsula Insurance.
Oh, you got his name right.
And we have Katrina from Tampa Home Talk. So we have to talk about this briefly. We talked about fires. I know for apartment buildings, condominium complexes, the number one cause of fires generally there outside of kitchen are going to be laundry vents.
Right. In fact, in the result of the data that I pulled about laundry room fires are about 3% of the losses in residential properties across the country. But dryer vent is a big problem. And so having those things cleaned and maintained on a regular basis.
Just once a year?
Once a year. Just, change the batteries in your smoke detectors. Every time the clocks change, have your laundry vents checked.
Definitely.
Once a year.
Yeah.
Now, we had so much stuff to cover. We really didn't get to everything, but I do want to talk a little bit about 10 cybersecurity tips, especially running into the holidays. We've had the guys at Pasco, remember, and several times the detectives to talk a lot about this. Black Friday's next week, so, be aware.
Yeah.
All the porch pirates and all that stuff is going to start coming up in the next month, I would say. You'll see a lot of that. So what 10 tips do we have for the person listening around cybersecurity? Sure. And is this covered under insurance? Is that why we're bringing it up?
So, and I'll let Stacy address that. He wrote a really excellent paper about what we offer in terms of identity theft. Really was what it comes down to for that. But cybersecurity, the true hackers of the world today are not focusing on individuals like you and me. They're going after big companies.
Yeah, like title companies.
Right, where they get ransom money from them, right? So that's a huge exposure in that world. But just your personal things that you can do to sort of protect yourself, particularly coming into the Black Friday, but more importantly, how much time we spend on computers and on the internet. So it's important to keep your security systems updated on your software, on your machine, on your computer. So when you get Norton antivirus or whatever tool you use, make sure you do the updates because that's important.
I tell you, people wonder why I'm a hybrid because I have like an Android phone, but I have a Mac laptop. And if you operate on a Mac, that thing is like annoying. It will not go away until you update it. And eventually it just shuts down. It's like, no, you're updating.
The other thing is passwords. Make sure you have good passwords, not like your birth date. That's a silly one.
And what's your recommendation on a good password?
So a good word is you got to use capitals, lowercase, symbols, mix them up. If you have a word, insert a number that looks like the letter, whatever you might do, use those special characters as well. I do that personally for mine.
Or something that doesn't spell anything, it would be gibberish.
Absolutely.
Like that's a good
but something
tip.
That's meaningful to you.
Right.
One of the things I do a lot now, too, is this two-factor authentication. Mm-hmm. So you sign in, and then it sends you a text with a number, and you have to put it back in. That way you're in their site, and they're checking to be sure you are truly who you are.
I get it, and then my girls try to log in, and
it's frustrating
that I
sometimes.
have, and they're like, I need your phone. You just got a code. What is it?
Exactly. Make sure you understand phishing. What's happening with phishing? There's a lot of emails that come out today. Mm-hmm. I think seniors, and my father fell prey to this, my mother-in-law did as well. They think they have to read every email that comes because it got sent to them. But make sure but if you're going to look at an email, if you don't know who it's from, then you ought to be cautious. Don't spend time looking at it.
So I'm going to spend just a second on that because it applies very much in our world, and we do talk about it. I had a first-time home buyer literally buying a $400,000 house, putting 20% down, and we talk about this in our buyer consultation, and he was aware of it. But we tell them when they drop off their escrow deposit to title to get a copy of the wiring instructions because anybody can very easily be hacked, and we are not going to send them wiring instructions. It comes from title, and it comes encrypted. And if it comes any other way, be aware, right? right? And so we had them pick up the wiring instructions, and they picked it up for Chase, and then all of a sudden they got an email, because these hackers ended up hacking the title company. They follow them along, and then right about the time it's time to wire funds, they conveniently sent wiring instructions to Bank of America that look super official. Like they copy and paste the same signature line. Yeah.
That's easy.
And so what happened was my client remembered that we talked about that and did not fall victim to it, but there was somebody else that was supposed to close the day before that actually didn't close, and we're trying to retrieve that wire. And the money went somewhere overseas, and we tell them, look, these crimes are investigated by the FBI and they're not very high on their priority list.
Not
but for you, it means unless you can come up with that money by another means, you're not getting your house. So it's really important, and so phishing, that's right in line.
I think the piece, too, that is clear in that is...
and that's big money,
don't send
right?
your personal information via email. As soon as it leaves your computer and the email site that you're sending it from, whether it's Gmail or any of those sites, and it gets into the cyberspace, there's no security any longer. So the best thing to do, if you're going to pass information, like in a home purchase or that, don't email your documents.
Right.
Fax.
You should be uploading.
Fax is the most secure.
Them. A lot of them are now required.
Where you can go to their
yeah.
site. It's secure. You know it's there. You upload it, and it's
There's
done.
only 4 pieces of information that someone needs to steal your identity. And so let's think about this and how easy it is to get this information.
Sure.
Your name, right? That's all over Facebook. Your date of birth, that's probably on there too.
Not for me.
And then, but I'm just saying, like,
Yep,
I'm talking
possible.
about the general population, right?
Absolutely.
Your address, that's a matter of public record
Absolutely.
if you own a home. So guess what? You only need one more piece of information.
Security
That's
number.
your Social Security.
Protect that like it's gold. Don't
Yep.
let that out. Only give it to people that you know are going to use it for the purposes.
Do it over the phone, right? Like if you're applying,
and
you don't need to
one
text
thing I
it.
do, I get these messages sometimes on my phone from my credit card companies, allegedly. I never call the number that they say to call. I look on the card and call the customer service number on the card, because I know that's the number.
Or if somebody calls you, don't give information.
Never,
They called you.
never call back.
Call them back.
Talk to somebody at the location, because then you're protecting yourself. The other thing that I do, limit the use of your cards. I purchase things all with one card, a card that has alerts. Alerts that say your card was used when you weren't there. Yeah. Right? The no card present transaction.
I get alerts right away. Like I can be at dinner and I will get an alert on my phone before the waiter gets back with the bill.
And that's the way, that way you know that the transaction went through and it's legitimate.
Yeah.
And then you can monitor.
My daughter used her card at the gas pump a couple years ago, and there was a skimmer in there. And she was at school. She was in high school. She was a senior. And I got a card. I got a notice that there was a purchase with, I think, Spirit Airlines, and then Southwest right out there, and then another one. And so I fly a lot by Southwest, and I caught it right away. And then Southwest called me because they had my information on file. And they go, hey, somebody with your same name at your address just purchased a flight. I go, nope, not us. We're already calling the bank. I saw them coming through. In the meantime, I texted my daughter, did you book a flight? Where are you going? And then I see another one come. I'm like, wait a minute. She's like, what? So that was her first experience with that.
I use, not to be a salesperson, but I use American Express because they are, in my opinion, my personal experience, is the best at monitoring what happens.
Security.
I've gotten a call at 9 o'clock at night asking if I was making charges in Indonesia.
Well, I got Discovers like that too. They're really good.
Discovers the same
Stacey,
way.
any quick thoughts real quick, because we have to close the show out? Anything you want to add, or you wrote a really good report we can give out off the air? Let me do that. And we didn't get a chance to go through all, Tim. So if you want that, call or text us at 813-377-2775, 813-377-2775. Thanks, you guys, for joining us.
Absolutely.
It's been a great show.
Yeah,
Remember, love where you live, or we're going to fix it. Welcome home. We'll be back next week to talk about Small Business Saturday. Stick around.